Hi, you're watching WION, World is One News. I am Sana Khan. Now let's get to the big story of the day. In a 4-hour-long surgical operation, India struck terrorist hideouts across the line of control with Pakistan. 38 terrorists taken out, 2 Pakistani soldiers were killed and 9 injured. India's first major strike, part of India's answer to the Uri terror attack on the day 11 after terrorists struck Uri, a deadly attack that left 19 Indian soldiers dead. Hectic developments are on both sides of the border. Over the next half hour, we take a look at the specifics of the operations, the political reactions and expert views on India's military response. What will Pakistan do next? And a look at what to expect in the days to come as far as New Delhi's diplomatic offensive against Pakistan goes. Joining me tonight is Mr. Prem Jha, columnist and author of Kashmir 1947. Major General D.N. Khurana, a defense expert, now retired. He has served the Indian Army for 40 years now. Colonel A.K. Sharma is also here with us in the studio. He's the editor, South Asia Defense and Strategic Review. Joining me from Mumbai this evening is WION's editor-in-chief, Mr. Rohit Gandhi, our correspondent in New Delhi, Ramesh Ramachandran, and Taha Siddiqui, of course, our correspondent joining me from Islamabad in Pakistan. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this evening. Rohit, I'll toss it over to you first. I believe you have some crucial information.
Thank you, Sana. This is an operation that was carried out by the Indian military across the line of control. What we are being told, this is being described as Operation Dark Night. It was very chosen with, with a strategic view that the Indian Army would operate at night. The helicopter operation happened on the Indian side of the line of control. Beyond that, it was a land operation carried across the border. The death count is still up in the air. The Indian Army hasn't confirmed to us the death count. But what they're saying is they have 1 injury on their side. A soldier was injured in the foot and he was brought back to safety. What they're also saying is that the UAVs were carried out to figure out what kind of damage has been caused and the assessment of the operation. The Indian Army then retreated back after the attack. At about 9 a.m. this morning, the Pakistani military began to respond. They responded with artillery fire. 130, 155 mm guns were used. The Indian DGMO called the Pakistani DGMO and informed him that the operation was over from the Indian side. It was targeted at the militants and not at the Pakistani military, because the Pakistani military was responding as if the Pakistani military had been attacked itself. On the other end, the Pakistani army has come out and said there was no violation on its side, on the line of control, and the community from there is saying, the political community is saying that this is just a strategic war, and what the Indians are doing is trying to showcase what they can do, but they really did not carry out these strikes. So there is some back and forth there happening, but the Indian military sticking with its viewpoint and sticking to its strategy that we did carry out the operation, and they will carry out such operations in the future if at all they feel that militants from the other side are striking India on this side.
All right, Rohit, thanks for those crucial inputs. So, gentlemen, it's very clear that India went in knowing full well what's going to be the plan of action. It was a precision strike which carried out, after carrying out a detailed, plan of action with the diplomatic offensive that India had in mind for the past 10 days. Now, if I could start with you, Colonel A.K. Sharma, what do you make of what India did today? Of course, Pakistan still in a state of denial, saying that it was nothing more than cross-border fire.
Yeah, Sanam, I think at the larger level, it was a message. It was a message delivered to Pakistan, a message delivered loud and clear. The day Uri attack took place, the DGMO went down there and he did say that we reserve the right to strike, and we shall strike at the place and timing of our own choosing. About 4 days back, when we were discussing Sushma Swaraj's speech, I again said that I think this time Indian Army will strike, but when and how is best left to them. And I think the Indian Army actually did it rather well. They decided to take action.
Right.
A calibrated action. They chose the targets well. They chose the targets where they could actually cause a fair amount of destruction. And they ensured that there are no casualties on our side. All in all, despite a heightened state of alert on Pakistani side, because they knew something of this nature might happen.
Might happen, right.
I think I would give all credit to the Indian Army on account of their training, on account of their planning, and the way they conducted the entire operation.
Right. Major General D.N. Khurana, I'll come to you in just a few moments, but going to Mr. Prem Shankar Jafar, sir, what do you make of India's, fight against Pakistan? India has been systematically working towards, choking Pakistan. Several diplomatic moves being made there, and now comes this surgical military attack.
I don't think they are separate actions. They are a part of a concerted response.
Absolutely.
And as a concerted response, I think it has been a sound and very carefully, in fact, it's been a restrained response. Let me start with the first thing. There was a lot of shouting about anger and so on and so forth, but the mere fact that Mr. Modi and Mr. Ram Madhav and people made different remarks at different times, shows that there was no pre-planning of this. It was just anger. This attack is the exact opposite. It is very precisely calculated, and it's an absolutely minimal attack. I wouldn't call this a surgical strike. I'd call this a precision strike.
Right.
And it's not a strike on the army. It's not a strike on the Pakistani state. Please, one more thing. It's a strike against launch pads from where these Fedayeen terrorists have been coming in. Our previous strategy used to be to wait for them to come in because we would know they were coming in, and we had a very high rate of neutralization because we have very good equipment now, but we would do it inside Indian Kashmir. This time we went across, and I think that's the only difference.
Right.
And I think that on balance, it was necessary. Let's say it was necessary. I don't like violence, but it was necessary. Okay?
All right. Point taken. Major General D.N. Khurana, do you also think, as Mr. Jha put very well, culmination of a concerted diplomatic as well as a military initiative by India? Well done. Good work by the Indian Army.
Well, before I come to saying well done, good job done by Indian Army, let me take a larger perspective.
Sure.
Just 2 days back in your program here, we were discussing whether there was a military option or not. And I remember there was a gentleman from Telegraph London. When I said the military option is on the table, he said, no, India is a good boy in the international field. India will not do it.
Just like the other times when India hasn't
Just like the
really...
other times. So I think the most important outcome which has come this morning is that we have demonstrated political will, that we can take the hard decision, that we've had enough. A time has come when we will convey the message not only to Pakistan but to the world at large that we can take tough decisions when it comes to national security. Having said that, let me come to the military. I sit here as a very proud soldier today, very proud Indian and proud soldier. Incidentally, I have commanded this sector in this very area of about 100 kilometers as brigadier. So I know this area very well.
Right.
Call it whether it was a terrorist strike against the terrorists or it was a military strike, those are semantics. To cross that line of control, which is so tightly held, which is mined, with very few narrow gaps,
Right.
particularly after 10 days of heightened tension, was a great achievement to achieve that surprise. You can't just go across, it's not so simple. You've achieved surprise, you kept the heads down, you've gone up to 2 kilometers to 3 kilometers, precisely to the targets that you had to go to in a dark night, and I'm glad the operation being called
name
Dark
is
Night.
called Dark Night, yeah.
We achieved the objectives. 38, 39 is a figure. More important is that you have inflicted casualties on a precisely calculated manner. You had on the dot intelligence.
Right.
You executed it on the dot. And in such operations, the most difficult part is to extricate, to come back. And they came back without a casualty.
Absolutely.
My information is that this one Jawan that we have had a foot casualty is from the mines.
Right,
the whole
right.
area is mined, let me tell you. I had
In fact, some reports also say that the 2 Pakistani soldiers who were killed, they were also killed because of the mines.
we don't know.
Initial reports, we don't know.
I want to stress on the fact that we've carried out a military strike. We've achieved total surprise.
Right.
We had precision.
And extract
We
our
have
soldiers.
achieved the objectives. Without any damage to ourselves, we've got back.
Right.
And I think a tremendous message has gone across.
Right.
we were being taken for granted. We'll keep saying, you know, you turn the cheek and then you turn the other cheek. I don't know how many cheeks.
So
we'll
message
turn.
has been sent. I'm going to ask my producer. We have a report, in fact, which we're going to play out in just a bit. But let's get in a quick word from our correspondents on the ground, Ramesh Ramachandran, who's in Delhi, Taha Siddiqui joining us from Islamabad. Taha, first to you. Hectic developments through the day. All right, I'm being told Taha will join us in just a bit. But Ramesh, what's the situation on the ground? We heard leaders cutting across party lines, speaking in one voice. That's, of course, a welcome change, and that's how it is in these times. But what's happening? What is the word on the ground about India striking Pakistan? This coming with a sustained diplomatic effort that was on.
Well, let's get one thing very clear. It's very tempting to get lost in the maze of detail. The short point is that it was a retaliatory strike. It was not as if India initiated this operation. So that we must not lose sight of that fact. Now, that said, the message was multidimensional. One, the message of the strike was directly aimed at the Pakistan government, be it the civilian government or the military establishment, and in a way also the people of Pakistan, because Prime Minister Modi had directly spoken to the people of Pakistan in his public address a few days ago. The second message was more in a domestic context to a domestic constituency, that this government is acutely aware of the need to impose costs on the perpetrators of the terror attack. And the third message was to the international community at large, that they need to lean on Pakistan and discourage it from using terrorism as an instrument of state policy. So the full implications of the cross-LOC surgical strike are yet to fully unfold. Sana?
All right, Ramesh, do stay with us. We might come back to you for more inputs in just a bit. But going back to Mr. Prem Shankar Jha first now, sir, what do you make of Pakistan's response? Do you see it as a natural response after these precision strikes, as you call them, on Pakistan? Pakistan, on the back foot, of course, finds itself in an increasingly embarrassing position as well at this point in time. Though Khwaja Asif there very categorically saying that these were some small strikes and, dismissing them off. Pakistani establishment saying that this was not even a surgical strike, just cross-border fire.
Look, this kind of thing is not important. What is important is the tone of what they have said. The Pakistani establishment, the civilian establishment, the civilian government is trying to minimize the importance of this strike. Minimizing it is necessary in order to not be pushed into a position where they're forced to take the next step. We are crowing, we're so happy. We're so happy we bashed a country 1/8 our size. But the fact is that country can hit back too. Do you want to continue with this? Because the escalation is absolutely deadly dangerous. Don't forget that. I think what's been done has been done very well, because it's been kept very precisely within a certain framework, which will not excite retaliation from Pakistan. And the Pakistanis have recognized that, and the civilian government, at any rate, is trying to play it down. So let's give them a chance. Let's not call this a victory, a surgical strike, etc., etc. Brigadier Khurana perfectly rightly said on the dot, but on the dot is what I was saying. These are precision moves, and they're really very good. And I think that we should just leave it at that. I'm really frightened of our media and the way that they're playing this thing up as some kind of a great response. That kind of response is the response of weak bullies. Are we bullies? Are we weak? Let's ask ourselves that.
Right. In fact, we at WION haven't actually been advocating the idea of war itself, but it's only natural for Pakistan to react the way that it did at this point in time. Obviously not propagating the idea of war, especially to the civilians in both India and Pakistan. We have to keep that crucial factor in mind. I'm going to quickly go across to Colonel A.K. Sharma and then back to Mr. Rohit Gandhi for a quick response. Yeah.
Right. So I would quite back that. When we say a job well done, is credit to the Indian Army for precise action. They did what they had to, and they came back quietly without incurring any casualties, right? But at the other level, if you hear the DGMO's brief, very clearly said, as far as we are concerned, the operations are over. B, he clearly states, this was not against the Pakistan army. This was against specific targets
Terrorists,
where we know that there were launch pads for the terrorists who were planning to sneak in.
Absolutely,
so I think there is a definite effort on our part, as I also see on Pakistan's response as well, to play things down and keep it at a minimum level.
Right. Rohit, coming to you, you've been giving us specific inputs throughout the day of the inside information really on this entire operation. And we had an idea earlier on in the day when you said choppers were involved. That gives us a sense of how well planned the attack was, A, and B, that India has that kind of military might to go ahead and carry out these kind of strikes.
Sana, you have to remember that the Indian military has been planning this for a while. The Indian military has been training with a lot of other militaries in case they have to carry out a strike like this. Thermal imaging equipment has been secured for strikes like this, and certainly a well-planned strike. Anything to do with a strike which involves para and which involves special forces, the biggest challenge is the exit strategy, and I think that is what was worked out well. It seems to have panned out. It does not always pan out. We've seen strikes where the exit strategy doesn't always work out. What we also have to remember from Pakistan's end, this is a diplomatic move from India's end in trying to curtail it, give a clear message that this is not against the Pakistani government or the Pakistani military. It is targeted at terrorist camps, which Pakistani said never existed, and probably they did not have the information. Whatever be the case, India does not want to escalate this further. India sent a clear message, and the message is that any terrorist group functioning wherever they may be, the Indian military will go after them. And the Pakistanis have also turned around and said that anytime this happens again, they will look at this more seriously than they're looking at it this time. I think the world community has also played a role. India, Pakistan informed of its movement after the strike was finished. So it's all been done in good faith. I was talking about hot pursuits. Hot pursuits, you have hot pursuits with your neighbors, and you carry out these if you have good relationship. And obviously Pakistan has always claimed that it does not support any terrorist group directly. So if they wouldn't respond if it was against a terrorist group and not against Pakistan directly on its own.
Absolutely. Agree with that. Very valid points there being made by Rohit Gandhi. You wanted to react, Major General Khurana. Please go ahead.
Yes, Anna.
Yeah.
Firstly, I want to say that we should not be looking at purely in that small operation across 7 posts and destroying the infrastructure of the terrorists. I think there's a larger thing that we should be looking at.
Right.
The larger thing is all these years we've been conveying a message, meant or unmeant, that we wouldn't do any military operation against that. So we don't have to be apologetic. Having taken or given credit to the armed forces for doing it meticulously well, I think what we have demonstrated is a political will that India can do it.
Right.
And therefore, we have confined it definitely to the terrorist camps. Yes, we have not done it against the military. But I want to stress again that it's sitting on that border, those posts, we used to say not even a bird can go across, fly across without the other guys knowing about it.
Right.
So when Pakistani DGMO or their public relations say that, oh, nothing much has happened, what do we expect them to say? That yes, the Indian army crossed over, went in 2 to 3 kilometers, destroyed the terrorist camps? No, because they have not been able to digest it. So I don't want to be apologetic. I want to be realistic about it. I want to be prudent about it. I would expect some response. And let me tell you that when we go in, that must have been factored in, what kind of a response. So therefore, I'd like to just repeat, let's not be apologetic about it. It was well meant, well demonstrated, well executed, and now we are ready. Let them come and we'll see what we do.
All right. Quickly going across to Mr. Jha now. You think that the Indian government's response to, sort of avenge the Uri terror attack is part of that, medium to long-term planning and how to deal with Pakistan now in the days to come, starting from here on, perhaps taking this new line going forward?
Well, first of all, I don't think there is a medium to long-term planning on how to deal with Pakistan, or for that matter, Kashmir. Initially, this government is only 2 years old, and more important, remember that the people in this government, in this particular government, have not been in power before the center. So there's a lot of learning that they're doing, and a lot of learning is being done very rapidly in the last 3 months since the Kashmir crisis developed. So let's give them a little bit more time. Secondly, the learning is being done quite well, I think, on balance, because I think this operation, you see huge amount of let's say dramatics, but the actual measures being contemplated or being taken are very, very precise and limited. They are sort of, they're within a very clear framework of sending a message. For example, the Indus Water Treaty thing, huge amount of noise was made about it. But the truth is that the government is not thinking of doing anything that is outside the present treaty. It's just saying we will withdraw certain concessions that were there out of goodwill to Pakistan in the past. And if you don't show goodwill to us, how can we continue with them? So the door is still left open to Pakistan, Now, let me say one more thing.
Right.
I think that Pakistan's civilian government's position is very difficult because it's a weak government. It's not like our government. It's not got a huge sort of constitutional backing. It's a new state. We are not. We are a 5,000-year-old state. We don't understand this difference. And we have to make allowances. The whole policy of India's strategic restraint was based upon the idea of understanding that this is a new state. It's still part of our geography. It's part of our culture. Therefore, we must be restrained. Mr. Modi has said that there's a limit to restraint, and I also agree with that, because there have been 42 attacks in the last 6 years across the line of control by similar groups. This had to stop, and targeting the launch pads was exactly the right thing to do. It's a brilliant job, that.
Right. So having said that, very quickly, responses from Colonel Sharma as well as Major General Khurana and then Rohit. Has India been able to successfully do that, gone ahead, did what it was thinking it will do without risking escalation now, done absolutely the right thing, talking about all the ways combined together that we've been seeing.
I think absolutely I agree with that. I think we've calibrated very well with the diplomatic efforts. But one thing we seem to be forgetting, we've demonstrated another capability in this country of intelligence gathering.
Right.
We have demonstrated that we can collect the intelligence up to date, up to the minute, and utilize it.
Act on it,
And secondly, that I agree with Mr. Jha about this, that this government has demonstrated that, look, there is a line up to which we'll go, and beyond that line, we will have to be responsible for it. And thirdly, I also agree that I think we've done it in a very constrained manner. The DGMO said the operation is over. I do not, in my long service and thereafter, find in the military history where a force or a country which is undertaking an operation calls up the adversary, the Director General Military Operations, tell them, look here, we did this, we've done this, but our operation is over.
Colonel Sharma, very quickly.
So I think we had a number of options. We've been talking about this calibrated response for a long time. And of the options available, this probably, in hindsight, appears to be the best option that we could have gone in for. Minimal casualties on our own side, no collateral damage. You hit very precise targets, and the guys who are waiting to hit you in any case. So I think Pakistan, even though they'll remain in a state of denial for understandable reasons, it hasn't struck them too hard because their own soldiers are not really involved in this.
Right.
So I
and
think
also making sure, in case of retaliation now, evacuation of the borders is already on. So
that,
all
of
the
course,
details
is a different issue. We'll talk about it a little later. That's not a planned action. Those are some of the villagers who decided on their own that there may be escalation, so they decided to move to safer areas.
No, I think it's a very prudent action on our part. Very prudent action.
I think it seems planned on
absolutely. It's a part of the. It's a part of the.
We're going to talk more about this in just a bit. But Rohit, just to wrap up this particular section of the discussion.
Sana, we have to remember that while everybody will hope this will go without an incident and we'll go ahead from here, but there is certainly going to be fallout. India needs to be ready for the fallout. Pakistan will probably already be getting ready for seeing how they can react, and if at all they can react. So the movement of the people on both sides of the border is ongoing now as we speak. Also, the 14, 15 and 16 Corps of the Indian Army are on high alert. There are almost 500,000 troops on the Indian side and close to 250,000 troops on the Pakistani side. They're all on high alert right now, and we still are, India and Pakistan are two nuclear countries. So let's not discount any of what can happen, and we have to be prepared. So while no warmongering needs to happen, but at the same time, both countries have their own sovereign right on what they want to do and how they want to react.
Absolutely. With that, we're taking a very short break. Thanks, Rohit, for joining us for the moment. Also, Ramesh, our guests continue to stay with us. We'll be right back after this short break and talk about many more aspects of what happened or has been happening over the past few days.